Good morning and welcome to Unusual Activity powered by FinancialJuice.com with George Avedon and Milton Marmonides. Thank you for joining us the 7th of January 2015. As always, we are very busy this morning with news coming in from Europe, of course, the French terror attacks, oil movements, and of course the strength in the US dollar. Let's jump into some of the numbers that we're seeing this morning. S&P 500 futures are higher by 15.25, handles at 2009.75. West Texas Intermediate crude at higher by 37 cents at $48.31, a bit off the highs than we were this morning, but certainly an improvement over the last few days. We'll see what happens in the rest of the trading day. We have the 10-year still below the 2% at 1.968. And folks, for us, the larger story here on the yield is the 30-year at 2.530. And the dollar index, the DXY, if you've been listening to us for the last several weeks, we've been commenting that the dollar has an impact on not just oil and other commodities, but certainly trade as well, as those folks that follow know very well. Dollar index at 92.076, higher by 0.571. The euro continues its decline, still in the 118 handle, at 118.36, lower by 0.0085. So let's jump into the specifics of what we're watching. Let's have a quick recap of yesterday's trading day. We had a late morning, continued selling, then a more or less of a range bound in the afternoon with an attempt at a small rally towards the end of the trading day. The S&P 500 was lower by 8.89%, 0.89% at 2002.61. Where the Dow Jones Industrial Average lower by 0.74 at 17,371.64, and the Nasdaq finished lower by 1.29% at 4592.74. So, what are we watching this morning? Certainly, from a pure geopolitical perspective, always an eye on the Middle East with respect to ISIL. We haven't seen much headlines coming out that may impact markets recently, but again, always keeping an eye on that. We had in Europe, we had a CPI drop by 0.2%. Conversation increasing, and the term of deflation really entering the lexicon, the conversations, topics of central bankers, analysts, traders, institutional folks. The fact that we are so far away from the 2.0% inflation target, and that's a real concern, folks. So once we get into deflation, that's something that central bankers are very weary of and very concerned of, and the fact that they're even bringing that up as a term, not even reduced inflation expectations, but purely deflation concern. Also, concern in the EU with respect to unemployment. Certainly Germany had positive numbers, 3 months in a row, positive trend in the employment numbers in Germany. Also, we're looking forward to the January 22nd ECB meeting. Of course, leading up to the meeting, we will hear and see a plethora of commentary and opinions as we lead into that meeting. The oil drop. The larger conversation here is, what does the oil drop mean for specific companies? We know what it means for countries such as Russia, but when you get down to the individual companies, what does this mean? It means it's a lower revenue stream, folks, right? So if an oil producer it needs oil prices to be at a particular price, and they're below that, right? Pure economics here, pure finance. It's a lower revenue stream. What does that lead to? If you're earning less, you're going to decrease your capital expenditures, specifically in individual companies. And some of the numbers that are coming out is that these particular capital expenditures, these companies that are in fracking and shale and so forth, they consist of approximately 40% of all capex of the company. So a huge amount of capex was spent within the last 5 to 10 years by the fracking companies, the shale drillers. So that's something that's it certainly, oil drop is good for the consumer. We know that, but in the longer term, and this is something that Milton and I have been bringing up over and over again, what's the real implication on not just countries, bigger companies, and what's the implication on the smaller companies as well? Also, certainly we had the French terror attacks, as we mentioned earlier. France is on high alert. This is something we obviously we do not like to see, and so we'll see where could there be a perception of risk shift, at least for the short term, as we watch the after effects of this terror attack and attacks, and we're watching that rather closely. So, folks, what are the central themes here? One of the things that we're going to bring up every day is what are the central themes going into the day, and how would that impact the rest of the trading? So clearly, we'll talk about this, get into a little bit more specifics later, but certainly euro weakness, dollar strength, continued oil weakness. Certainly, we had a little bit of a reprieve from the sell-off, at least in the interim, in the morning in West Texas Intermediate, currently at 48.46. Certainly, conversation is that QE is coming in some shape or form, and we'll wait for the continued commentary from various ECB members, including and Draghi as well. Certainly, that deflation risk that we talked about, that's rather important, and also still in conversation. We'll continue to be in conversation. We feel is this quote-unquote Grexit. The Greek exit, potential Greek exit from the euro specifically, not the EU, but the exit from the euro, and is there risk of a contagion going to other countries? Not just the exit, but this notion of a deal being made of their debt, what they're going to pay on their debt, whether it's going to be 50% or any other number, and how are other countries going to respond to that? So that's the larger story that we're monitoring rather closely. Certainly, with oil being sustaining its decline recently, we've seen that. We've been reporting on that. We've been discussing that. What's the impact on Russia? We know, excuse me. We know that they're concerned about the ruble. They're concerned about the oil prices. How will they respond? Certainly, there's been a less headlines coming out with respect to Russia and Ukraine, and how do we? How does the Russia react to the West coming into 2015? This morning, a few numbers coming out with respect to the U.S., and certainly we had the ADP numbers at 241,000. Expected was 224. We had the trade balance coming in at minus 39.0 billion. for November. This is the month-over-month number, and the expected was 42.0 billion. Previous was negative 43.4 billion. Also, this morning, 10:30, the ever important EIA petroleum inventories at 10:30. So we'll see how that impacts the number. Certainly, with a lot of attention on oil. That number it has a increased value, if you will, in terms of perception on perhaps where oil may be headed. At 2 o'clock, we have the FOMC minutes. We know at times we've seen that sometimes FOMC minutes can have a direct reaction in the markets, and sometimes it's a bit delayed in terms of the reaction to the FOMC minutes. Once everybody reads through them, gets an idea of what it all means. Also, Baltic Dry Index drops 0.4% to 758 points. Folks, we've seen a consistent drop in this Baltic Dry Index, and those who have been following this, those who have been listening to us, is rather important. It's a great leading indicator of economic activities, at least for the short term. Also, we talked about certain themes for the day, and these themes of 2015 really will continue on a daily basis. So something that we're monitoring. There's constant commentary of FOMC decisions, rates, and what happens to treasuries. We've seen a rather severe reaction in the treasuries as of late, specifically in the 5, 10, and 30-year. We'll get into that a little bit deeper. Global central bank action, certainly commentary. We've discussed that. Fluctuations in oil and gas and nat gas. On the geopolitical side, certainly watching Russia, Ukraine, and Russia relationship to China. That's the most interesting there. And also, will the crude new regulations impact oil somehow, specifically for shale drillers and the fracking piece? And of course, OPEC, we're monitoring if there's any surprise commentary or if there's any surprise announcements from OPEC. And that will continue through 2015, barring any other events. And certainly macroeconomic news, we're constantly looking out for that. And certainly the value of the larger, more readily available currencies, the dollar, the euro, certainly its impact on the ruble, and certainly looking at the yuan, certainly China's possible slowdown and their response to that, and additionally, it's the yen as well. It's this notion that Japan is very important with respect to investments in Asia specifically. So that's something that's we'll continue to keep an eye on. Before we get to the overnight markets and specific in commodity, energy, and raw materials, I'd like to bring Milton in and have a conversation about technical analysis and what he's seeing. Milt, what are you seeing out there this morning? Certainly a strong, at least pre-market S&P futures this morning. You think this is something that's sustainable, or do you think this is a temporary pause in the recent downtrend in the S&P futures specifically? What's your thought on that?
Well, I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens this morning in the markets. Is this a a short-term dead cat bouncing on the markets? Is this a reactionary move up? There really has not been much on the news front besides a few earnings, and whatever happened in France. Our sympathies go out to everyone there, and so there really has not been anything big this morning to have this 16, 17 handle move to the upside in the futures. The 10-year is basically, it's a little higher. It was trading at highs in 19 at 1.989, then hit lows of 1.959. Now it's back to 1.98. Up a little this morning on the yield side. Oil is up 30 cents. It's nothing, nothing across the board that could signal a vicious rally. The dollar strength continues. Euro weakness continues. Seems to be like some sort of currency battles going on here and there, but other than that, I don't see much. I don't see much to make this more than just a relief, dead cat, whatever you want to call it, type of move. So that's just my feel on that, on the ES, the futures, on the S&Ps. Let me just jump on the quick technicals. Let's do the ES first. S&Ps, you're trading right at resistance levels, 2010 plus or minus always, but you're at resistance levels at this point. So we're keeping an eye at these levels. We're keeping an eye if the market could break to the upside, but we need to see that volume, to confirm that move. So we're going to watch the volume, watching the action at this level, see if it continues strength when the market opens or the weakness comes back in, and we go back to the 2000 support level. But as of now, we're at resistance. Next level of resistance is the 2018, 2020 level, and then we have the 2000 support. On the oil continuation downtrend. Oil is up 27 cents this morning. Yippee. Finally we're up once in the morning. So we'll see what happens with oil during the trading days. Trading day. We'll see if it can hold the gain. It hit a low of the overnight sessions, excuse me, of about 46.83. Could it go back to those levels? Who really knows? We will see what happens during the trading day. But as of now, oil is up 30 cents. Trading around support, resistance 48. And we will see, if the strength can continue. We need to see some sort of a reversal in this oil area. If not, you can easily see the 45s, some 46s. But the oil bulls need to take a stand and finally turn this to a positive. If not, who really knows where oil will be at the close today, at the settle today, tomorrow morning. I can't tell the future, so I really do not know. All I know is the feel right now is negative. Will I go full steam ahead on the long position? No. I'll just sit back and wait to see exactly what happens. If I miss a couple dollars, I don't care. I'd rather miss those dollars than let it come back in my face and drop another $3-4 lower. But as of now, watch it, keep an eye on it. You want to see that volume. You want to see a volume buying in oil to confirm possibly a short-term bottom. So we're watching that. We're keeping an eye on that. If we see anything, we'll let you guys know on the oil side. VIX in resistance level. Today it's clearly going to open up lower. Who knows? Probably around the 18, 19 levels. Ideally, we have the 14, 15 supports, 20s resistance. It's been a routine. Buying on the 14s, selling when it breaks the 20s. Buying on the 14s, selling when it breaks the 20s. We will see what happens today in VIX. And, volatility, throughout the day, lately has been fluctuating tremendously. So we may have some, big moves, big tradable setups. So we'll keep an eye on the VIX. And, once it opens, we can get a better feel on the technicals on that. Not even lastly, but let's just do gold real quick. It's the 1200 number, guys. Everyone, we've been talking about that 1200 number. Breaking above it, trading below it, breaking above it, trading below it. The magnet's 1200. 1250 upside resistance, 1150 downside support. It's in that tradable range, 1150 to 1250. Once that one of those levels break, I believe you can have a very strong move to either the upside or downside once those two resistance and support levels are broken. So as of now, tradable range between 1150 to 1250. U.S. dollar. What can we say about the U.S. dollar? It's strong every single day. And what is going on when no one even mentions the strength of the dollar? The correlation to oil. The correlation to overseas markets, in currencies. What really is going on? What is going on behind the scenes for the euro to be collapsing to 9-year lows? Something is not right. I believe the U.S. is, a beacon of strength for right now. Everyone is coming to the U.S. But outside the U.S., we have weakness all across the board in the European nations. This Greek exit, what's going on in Russia, Ukraine, still on a daily basis. No one even talks about it anymore because it's old news. Continues. China, Japan, Middle East, South America. I can go on and on and on about the quote-unquote negative feel outside of the U.S. But the market's at our all-time highs, close to all-time highs. So what does that show? In my opinion, money is coming to the U.S. It's a stability type thing. I believe oil at these levels, if it does not reverse, could be a very horrible, I'm trying to figure out the right words to say. I'll just use layman's. It'll be very bad for the markets. Give oil 50s, 40s for the next 3 to 6 months. Who knows what's going to happen? Many firms cannot survive. Many countries cannot survive at oil at those levels. It is a global economic disaster for oil to be at these levels. And no one, everyone I agree. You always want to see the bright side to situations. But we are realists. We trade markets. We want to see reality. And reality is not shown in these markets. With oil where it is, the 10-year where it is, the U.S. dollar strength, what's going on in Europe, what's going on in Russia, what's going on in China, Japan, South America, Venezuela, and the market's at all-time highs. That's just my end of story right there. George?
Thanks, Milt. So there you have let's call it a slightly bearish outlook. Milton certainly makes a compelling argument for why markets are overbought. On the other side of the equations, as Milton said, could the U.S. markets, could the equity markets be a beacon of strength? We've seen a bid in the 10-year, in the 30-year, in the 5-year, even recently, just in the last few days, as investors are going for quality. Certainly, with the decrease in the S&Ps as of late, how are investors seeing treasuries? And clearly, they're seeing treasuries as something of a strength, something of a way to accumulate and possibly could we see a more of a rise in the treasuries, not in yield but in prices. So a lot of folks have been wrong on that over the last few years. We've seen a continued conversation that there's this expectation of the increase in yield, and really we haven't seen anything dramatic yet in terms of yield increasing. Now, certainly, speaking to government traders, government bond traders, the trade there is this arb where selling a particular, whether it's the gilt or other EU-based bonds and buying the U.S. treasuries. Almost using the fixed income securities in the EU as a carry trade to purchase U.S. dollar denominated treasuries, and hence you have a continued strength in the U.S. dollars as those funds are coming in to purchase those treasuries. So there absolutely is a correlation with that. It's something we are monitoring rather closely. So let's jump into the overnight markets, and then we'll get into specific stocks as well. Let's get back to the presentations here. In Asia, we have excuse me, in overnights, we have the Nikkei basically flat at 0.01%. The Hang Seng higher by 0.83%. The Shanghai higher by 0.67%. In Europe, we have the FTSE higher by 1.24%. DAX in Germany higher by 1.07%. IBEX in Spain higher by 1.28%. The CAC in Paris higher by 1.32%. And just a quick check of our the S&P 500 futures are higher by 17.25 handles. Taking a look at the ES for the morning, certainly. Let's take a quick peek where we are in terms of actually very near the highs of this morning session in the ES. So let's also get into here we have, certainly for your benefit, the oil names, ETF and ETNs that we're monitoring rather closely. Some of these are bullish, bearish, two times, three times volatility of oil. So those are interesting to keep an eye on. In commodities, energy, raw materials, taking a look at West Texas Intermediate crude again at 48.33, higher by 41 cents. Gasoline lower by 0.006 at 1.3483. Natural gas below the $3 again at 2.938. If we take a look at where we are, it's just off the lows of the session. A little bit of a rebound just in the last few minutes here, but again, watching that $3 mark on the nat gas futures. Heating oil lower by 0.021 at 1.7055. Gold, as Milton mentioned, negative $7.20 at $1,212.20. Really using that 1,200 now becoming a support, but that does tend to fluctuate, support to resistance. Obviously, something goes through the resistance becomes a support. Something goes through the support becomes a resistance, and that's something that we're keeping an eye on that. Also, silver lower by 0.242 at $16.39.5. Platinum lower by $2.90 at $1,218.50. Cocoa higher by $20 at $29.22. Let's get into, as we've been saying all morning long, is the 5, 10, and 30 year on the treasuries. The 5-year 1.506, a little bit of a lift from earlier this morning. We have the 10-year at 1.989, a little bit of lift on the yield, but again, below that 2%. And also, for us, really the bigger story is the 30-year 2.553. About, if you do about 150 basis points lower than we were about a year ago, and that is rather impressive moves in that 30-year. Also, the U.S. dollar continues its move higher, higher by 0.64 at 92.139. The euro continues its decline, currently still at the 118 handle, the 1.1826, lower by 0.0095. We're watching that rather closely. Certainly inversely correlated to an inverse correlation to the U.S. dollar. So let's jump into specific securities that we are seeing being circulated around desks this morning. And let's start off with MON. Monsanto says has confidence in 5-year plan to more than double outgoing earnings per share. So currently, Monsanto is at 117 indication this morning. ARNA Arena Pharmaceutical reports positive results from phase 1B clinical trial evaluating APD 334, currently at $3.70 in pre-market. We're literally just seconds away from the opening bell in New York. MU, certainly Micron, lower in pre-market. Mixed earnings results not good enough at Micron. Earnings beat. Revenue miss, currently at $31.51. A few other stocks we wanted to go through that had that were higher in pre-market. See where they go. Let's see, Galactin Therapeutics. They were higher by 53% in pre-market. Fibrosis drug warrants further evaluation. We have JCP higher this morning on earnings at $7.85. SONC we have higher this morning at $29.79 in SONC, the Sonic Corp. We mentioned ARNA. GBX, excuse me, wrong, bear with us one moment. GBX higher this morning on earnings. Greenbrier Companies currently at $54.53 on the open here. SNE, Sony Corp, we have CEO does not expect major financial impact from hack. Stock is at $21.62. SVU, higher on earnings, currently at $9.63, higher by about 4.5%. COSI, higher this morning at $1.75, initial indication for the morning. And of course GEVA, we had a price common offering higher this morning at $101.42. This is Synageva Biopharmaceuticals. Also, so let's jump into we have the GEVA syndicate. Let's jump into a little bit more of the syndicates here. CDR files to sell 5 million shares of common stock. We have 5 Prime FPRX, 3.41 million share spot secondary, priced at $22. FPRX currently at $22.97, lower by about 0.1%. So again, secondaries tend to be dilutive effect for the actual security, but again, not always on that initial reaction. KPTI, 3 million shares secondary, priced at $33 at $31.96 currently. So that's lower by a little below 5%. OVA Science, OVAS, files to sell 85 million in common stock. Resource Capital files to sell $100 million in convertible notes due in 2020. GAVA, we mentioned this as well. MDCO files to sell 300 million in convertible notes due in 2022. Let's run through some of the larger insider transactions as we prepare for this morning. FUND, we've seen this before, the stock before, about $100,000 insider purchase, currently at $7.10. MILL, Miller Energy, currently at $1.08. We have $43,000 purchase. WATT. WATT, we had a $200,000 purchase in Energous Corp. CPB, Spectrum Brands Holding, $2.3 million purchase in SPB. We'll see if that has an impact on this morning trading. Spectrum Brands, so up about 1% based on that rather impressive insider purchase. JGV, we have about a $100,000 purchase at $12.35. CLMS, we had a little over $250,000 purchase as well. CLMS higher by over 2% this morning. CODI, we had numerous insider purchases this morning, higher by about 0.8% at $16.41. And of course, we have OPK. We've seen this before, higher by about just under a percent at $10 even this morning. About $250,000 purchase this overnight into this morning. So let's take a quick peek at where we are in futures this morning before we head out for the day. S&P 500 futures higher by 14 even at 2008.50. We have West Texas Intermediate crude higher by 0.65, 64 cents at $48.56. And we have the dollar index continuing its strength at 92.120. This is a really key level here we want to watch here. Last time it was up this high was in 2005, folks. So this is very interesting levels here on overall markets here. So folks, thanks for listening. This has been Unusual Activity powered by FinancialJuice.com with George Avedon and Milton Marmonides. Wishing you a great day and good hunting.